Welcome back for another welding project demonstration. In this video, I'm going to show you how to complete a vertical T-joint with a vertical lap joint. Now, if you think back to the previous project, we're going to assemble our pieces just the same, except now we're going to rotate our project 90 degrees so that our weld goes in vertically from bottom to the top. And one other thing, welding in the vertical position requires us to slightly drop our amperage. Gravity is going to want to pull the weld puddle out on us if it's too big or if there's too much molten metal in one spot. So by decreasing our amperage, we'll have a little bit more control over the weld. With this project, I'm going to be starting with 7018, so I've dropped my amps from 135 down to 105. I'm just going to be using 6010 to tack my pieces together. Once your pieces are tacked, find a way to get your project up off of the table. We want easy access to the bottom of the root on both joints, and so what I've done is I have a piece of scrap steel secured in a moving fixture. I'm going to tack weld the project to the scrap piece in a way that I can access the root of each joint completely. Once you've deposited your tack, go ahead and hold on to the project just for a couple of seconds to allow that tack weld to cool off and solidify and be able to hold the weight of the project. Now the work angle of our electrode is going to be 45 degrees. So if we think about how these two plates in the T-joint come together, they form a right angle, or 90 degrees, and we need to split that right in the middle in order to keep the weld balanced between both plates. So again, our work angle is going to be a 45 degree. And we're also going to have a slight push angle, meaning that we're going to point the electrode just a little bit in the direction that we're traveling. And remember, we're welding from the bottom to the top. And one more thing before I get started with the weld. So when we're welding vertically with 718, we are going to have some oscillation. So it's not going to be a stringer bead straight up, and we're not doing anything like a whippet motion with 6010. With this electrode, we are going to be utilizing a C motion. So think of drawing a C, but it's kind of rotated. I guess a better way to look at it is you're kind of drawing a capital U all the way up. Now there's another method you can use, which is the Z weave, but in this demonstration, I'm just going to stick to what's called the C weave. So that's essentially drawing a C on its side or a capital U, whatever is the easiest way for you to remember. One thing that you should notice is that I'm not swinging the electrode too far out to the sides on either plate. Just enough to where I can effectively use the C weave. If you need to, go ahead and pause for like half a second longer at the sides. That way, if you see any undercut forming, you can go ahead and fill it in before it becomes too much of an issue. And once you get to the top, you're going to want to hold your electrode in that spot just to fill in the crater. And once you get it filled in, then you can go ahead and break your arc. Now for the second weld, what I'm going to do is change my work angle so that way I'm focused more on this plate. And I'm still going to do the same thing. I'm going to do a C-weave, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to ensure that the weld not only is focused at this left plate, but I'm also going to ensure that I cover or I overlap this weld by at least half to about 2/3. Now for the third weld, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my work angle again to where I'm focusing more on this right plate and slight push angle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue the C-weave, but now I'm going to make sure that while my weld is focused on this plate, I'm also going to overlap the first weld and part of the second weld. I want everything to fuse nice and seamlessly. So this is definitely something that takes a little bit of patience. Don't try to rush through it. Okay, and now let me go ahead and rotate this over. For the lap joint, it's going to be no different. I'm going to have a work angle of about 45 degrees, slight push angle, And I'm going to have a C-weave as I progress from the bottom to the top, except this weld is going to be a single pass. So the T-joint was a multi-pass, lap joint is going to be a single pass. And now what I'm going to do, after completing both the T-joint and the lap joint with 7018, I'm going to go ahead and break this tack that's holding my project. I'm going to rotate my project around, and I'm going to tack it back in place with the other T-joint showing. This is going to allow me to deposit a weld using 6010. I'm just going to tack weld it back in place. So now my amperage is still 105, so I'm going to want to take a break here, go back over to my machine and lower my amperage to approximately 75. Okay, so I've got my project tacked in place. I've also brought the jig slightly higher so that way it's closer to the exhaust port. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to once again cut this angle in half. So my work angle is going to be a 45. I'm going to have a slightward push angle, and just like with horizontal, I'm going to have a whipping motion. I'm going to do that all the way from bottom to the top. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to follow the same pattern with 718. I'm still going to have a slightward push angle, but now my work angle is going to be changed so that way I'm focusing more of the weld on the left plate while also overlapping this first weld by about 1/2 to 2/3. Same thing, whip it motion from bottom to top. And now for the final weld using 6010, I'm going to focus my work angle so that way I am more pointed towards this right plate, so that way the weld is somewhat on the right plate, but then also overlaps the first and the second weld just slightly. And same thing, whip it motion from bottom to top. And now for the final 6010 weld on the lap joint. It's going to follow the same suit as all the other welds. My work angle is going to be a 45. I'm going to have a slight push angle, whip it motion all the way through. Once you've chipped and brushed off all the slag for all your welds, your project is pretty much done. Go ahead, break the tack, look over your project once more just to make sure there's no more chipping or brushing you have to do. Go ahead and cool your project off either by dunking it in a quench tank, letting it cool off by itself. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.